Welcome to A Stranger, a Suitcase and a Story. I'm Anton. This is a podcast about starting over. It is about what it takes to leave the familiar behind and the courage it takes to begin again in a land that isn't yet home. Together with my co-host Ben Liebenberg, we explore the untold stories of migration. Not just where people went, but why they left, what they held on to, and what they've had to let go. Each episode, we sit down with someone who's made that leap. Someone who's left behind not just places, but languages, careers, communities, and sometimes even parts of themselves. They share what called them forward, what nearly held them back, and what they've come to understand about identity, belonging, and starting again. Produced in partnership with Southern Crossings, a community for South Africans forging new lives in Australia, this podcast is a place to feel seen, heard, and understood. Because this isn't just about visas or paperwork. It's about identity, loss, hope, and the quiet strength it takes to rebuild a life piece by piece. So wherever you are on your journey, arriving, settling, or still thinking about it, welcome. This is where stories connect us all.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This information to customers travelling on the land airways. Flight LA 800 question 321 service to Auckland and Santiago. If you use
Welcome to episode 23 of A Stranger, a Suitcase and a Story. And today we have a really interesting guest with us. I mean, all our guests are interesting, but I'm super excited to have Dawid Naudé as a guest today. And we'll talk about Dawid, where he comes from. We'll talk a little bit about technology for sure, but probably more about how to set up a business and grow a business here in Australia, and I think that might be really interesting. But Dawid's story moves back and forth between two countries, and he spent 5 years of his childhood in Australia before returning to South Africa, where he grew up in Grahamstown in the Eastern Cape, attended St Andrews College, and later went to university in South Africa. After graduating, Dawid made a deliberate decision to return to Australia, this time on his own terms, to continue his studies at James Cook University in Queensland, focusing on business, e-commerce, and information systems. What began as further study became something more permanent, and Australia became home. What David carried with him wasn't a single item, but a way of operating, resourcefulness, the instinct to tinker, to solve problems, and to work with whatever is available, rather than waiting for perfect conditions. Finding his feet came through doing rather than overthinking, getting involved in sport, being useful at work, and saying yes to opportunity. Over the past 20 years, that mindset has led him through multiple career shifts, each opening new doors. Today, Dawid is recognized as one of Australia's most sought-after voices in artificial intelligence. His company, Pathfinder, which is a good name for a startup type of company or for your own business, was named AFR's most innovative company twice in its first 18 months before being acquired less than 2 years after launch. He now works directly with OpenAI, helping organizations like Coles Group and ABC move from, let's call it AI hype, into practical implementation, always with the belief that technology can be a force for good when well used. Well, welcome, Dawid. I'm really stoked to have you on the podcast today.
Thanks so much, and thanks for that. That was a great introduction. You put a lot of work into that, but it was really nice to listen to. I don't know, just so many images come flooding back of each of those steps along the way.
Yes, and I think that's the thing. You know, when you say this, when you hear this about you, because I asked you to write a bio, and then you don't write the bio like this, because I say, okay, well, let's go put the bio in a little bit of a story. So, and it is such a great a great way to kind of, when I say these things, then of course you realize, oh yeah, I was there, this is what happened, and so on. But Dawid, we have in our podcast, we have a section called a suitcase moment. And a suitcase moment is we've developed over time, which is often we talk about the connection between South Africa and Australia. And often I'd go back to the 19th century to dig up something really interesting. But I think, your career, thinking about the things that are important to you, I can't go back to the 19th century because I don't think AI was in the 19th century. Maybe in a different way. But perhaps what we can do is talk about radio astronomy. The Square Kilometre Array, SKA, funded by SKAO Intergovernmental Organisation, HQ in the UK, is a single radio telescope built across Australia and South Africa to answer first-order questions like how the first stars and galaxies were formed and how the universe evolved, search for life, dark matter and dark energy. And the name points to an ambition, an effective collecting area approaching 1 square kilometre, achieved by combining many antennas and dishes, not one giant dish. So here's the connection. In Western Australia, the SKA low will use 131,072 antennas grouped into 512 stations with baselines out to 74 to 75 kilometre, and it steers the sky, of course in software, a true aperture array of the lowest radio frequencies. And in South Africa, in the Karoo, the SKA mid brings 197 steerable dishes, including the Meerkat, spread over 150 kilometers for mid-frequency, high-resolution imaging. Together they are one observatory by design. So the raw signals flow to a supercomputer, obviously, or supercomputers, at terabytes per second, about 8 terabytes per second from SKA low to Perth, and 20 terabytes a second from SKA mid to Cape Town, and then condense it to hundreds of terabytes or petabytes per year through automated pipelines that rely on algorithms for detection and classification. In short, it's built to see with these type of algorithms. It's waking up, and in January 2026, the SKA mid in South Africa achieved first fringes, 2 dishes working together on a distant radio galaxy, proof that the instrument is behaving as an interferometer, turning raw signals into discovery. And so, Dawid, this is a mind-blowing kind of project that has been going on for a while, and it's in its early stages. And so I don't necessarily want to talk about astronomy because I don't know a lot about that. But perhaps, the connection with you is that it's one thing having all the stuff and the technology sitting out there. It's another thing translating it into something useful, right?
Yep, definitely. And there's a lot of examples there that you could derive from something like that. Even everybody pointing in the same direction, or joining forces in one common goal. And so I think there's always been an opportunity, no matter where you are in your career and in your life, where there's potential to be realized out there. There's stuff out there. You just need to be able to figure out how to make it easy and convenient and valuable for others, and then get a team that is all working together in the same direction to make that happen. So there's always parallels drawn from any kind of technology like that.
Mm. And then I think the other thing is when you get this enormous amount of information, that's one thing getting it, but it means nothing if you can't take that information and do something with it, right? And I think that's kind of where your interest comes in quite a lot, isn't it?
Absolutely. So you want to be, you need to make it useful. So that's the key thing. You need to make it useful, and you need to make it that people value it. Now, the only way you know whether something is valued by someone is if they show you that they value it. And a lot of the work that we do when we're chatting to customers is during a discovery call, people think we're looking for dollars and cents and things like that, that where they're going to save money from AI or make money from AI. What we actually look for in those calls is where people have raw emotion, where they come out and they go, oh my gosh, if you did that, that would change everything. And there's no ROI associated or anything like that. It's just that they know their role so well. So you need to make it useful, and then you need to, and then also you need to listen very, very carefully to your customers on what they say is useful and how they say it.
Yeah, and I think and I'd love to delve in that a little bit later, because I think that I want to specifically talk to you about, what does it take to set up a business in Australia, and whether it's any different anywhere else, and what kind of mindset does one have to have. But let's go back a little bit to the beginning, right? So let's go back to the beginning, where you kind of you grew up. So you started off in Australia and then went back to South Africa. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yep. So it was a bit of a choppy childhood. I come from a bit of a broken home, and I moved to Australia when I was about 2 or 3 years old. My dad moved here to work for, I think it was the Reserve Bank at the time, or it was, and then eventually Citibank, but always a finance guy. Was working at the Reserve Bank in South Africa before that. We were here for 5 years, so long enough to get citizenship, and then my mom and my dad they separated, and us kids went back to South Africa with my mom, whilst my dad stayed here, and we kind of landed first in Bethlehem in the Free State, where my mom's family lived. And even though my name is incredibly Afrikaans, and we are Afrikaans technically, because I'd started 5 years of schooling in Australia, we went back into an English class. Even in a very Afrikaans town like Bethlehem, us kids were in the English class, and slowly our language started changing from Afrikaans to English at home. And after a few years there, looking at long-term and a really favorable exchange rate, and my dad being in finance, we moved to Grahamstown. It's been renamed now, but back then it was Grahamstown, and that's where I grew up the rest of my childhood, which was fantastic. It was a fantastic educational town back then, great place for families, and went to Rhodes University for a few years, best years of my life, and then came over and carried on over here.
Wait, we're not going over here yet. So let's stick around a little bit in Rhodes. Yes, I also spent a few years in the Eastern Cape in Port Elizabeth. I worked for Ford Motor Company there, and so that's just and the Rhodes was also well known for its Rhodes festivals that they used to have. It's a cultural festival, wasn't it?
So, yep, Grahamstown has the National Arts Festival every year. It is one of the biggest festivals of its kind in the world. I think it's up to 1,000 acts that happen in that week. Artists from all over the country and all over the world descend on this town in the freezing Eastern Cape winter, and it's still to this day just an institution. It's very much the heartbeat of performing arts in South Africa, where people descend on that. And for me personally, I was actually, of all things, a really good jazz musician at school. I played for the National Jazz Band, and that was the festival that they would have, the Jazz Festival, the Standard Bank National Jazz Festival, and have all these brilliant acts everywhere. And that's where they would do the audition selection and things like that.
What instrument did you play?
I played trombone.
Okay. Yeah, well, and how old were you then, Dawid?
So it was all pretty much through high school, mid-90s. to 2021. But I arrived in Grahamstown in probably 1993, 1994, standard 3, now year 5.
Mm-hmm. And then from there you went to Rhodes University, and what did you study there?
So I studied a Bachelor of Computer Science, and Rhodes is at least was then. I'm not sure what it's like now, but back then it was very renowned as an incredible place to study computer science, and it was really a hub of innovation and talent of computer science. They had excellent lecturers there, very well-known people like Professor David Terry and all these other people that were phenomenal educators there, and an incredibly high standard of computer science. But I was a little bit off the rails at Rhodes, and it's also known as a huge party town. And I took a lot more interest in running our college house pub than studies, and so I actually didn't end up finishing my studies at Rhodes. I transferred over to James Cook University in Australia, and then carried on my studies and graduated there.
Was this pub a kind of a business?
It was actually. So I'd say I ran it was just I think that's probably the early shades of me enjoying this stuff, because I mean I was a very lazy student. I was a bit lost, to be honest. I was a bit off the rails. I'd actually put on a lot of weight. I think I blew up to like even 130 kilos and ended up losing 50 kilos in Australia, which is a different story.
My goodness.
But that was and like I remember one person saying to me whenever they come into my dorm room, I was in College House, which was the oldest residence, the first residence of Rhodes, so a lot of history there, that they'd always see the spreadsheet up on my computer of how many beers sold, inventory, all of that. And my whole goal was to make the pub simply to cover our costs and enough of a buffer that we can do interesting things. So yeah.
And you didn't drink away all the profit, you and your buddies, but did you?
100% we did.
We did.
100% we did.
But you did the interesting things as well, obviously.
So absolutely, this was it was great. Like this was so you have your formal bars, and then you have like that are across town. You have your official university ones, but then some of the residences themselves, some of the colleges, they had their own bar that you were allowed to open from like 7 to 10 p.m. 2-3 nights a week, that kind of thing. Right. But if you had a key, it may or may not have opened at other times as well.
So. Yeah, and so the reason why I'm asking is you say it was a little bit of a pub and so on. So that's probably, as you say, maybe and we'll talk about technology and why you studied that in the first place. But that was probably your first foray into, I actually like this idea of convincing people to buy my product and making money out of it and see what I can do with that, right?
I think so. I think. I remember once speaking, and somebody introduced me as a futurist, and I thought, geez, could not be further from the truth. I think I'm much more. I love the word resourcefulness. The word resourcefulness is so good. I don't know. Like, there's always stuff right in front of you that you can use to do something interesting. And probably my first real foray into business was. The school I went to was St. Andrews College, but I was a day student there. And in the mid-90s, laptops were incredibly expensive and they weren't very good. So most people had desktop computers. And if you had a computer at school, and it's a boarding school, and I was a day student, mostly boarders there. When people went home for the school holidays, you'd have all of these computers that were just sitting there unused. And so one year, for the Grahamstown National Arts Festival, we decided to open an internet cafe. That was when these things were taking off, and all the journalists needed a place to write up about art shows that they'd seen and things like that. They're covering different stories across the country. Mobile internet didn't exist. You had to find a place to work. And so we approached a local computer shop there and said, hey, why don't we actually turn your shop face into an internet cafe? And then we rented a whole lot of computers from students that were leaving the computers behind, and made them clean. And basically we brought about a dozen computers in there, and we gave each of the students, say 100 Rand or something like that, 200 Rand, whatever it was, for the break. And then did that. So I think that was probably the first example of me actually trying something.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then was that, so how did you, I mean, well, let me rather ask you this. I mean, you use the term resourcefulness. Where do you get that from, David?
I actually think I might have literally heard it from Tony Robbins. I went through a bit of a self-help craze, where I just read all these self-help books. This was probably 2009 or so. But I think in one of them, he spoke about resourcefulness as being one of the most important traits. And I think it's so true.
So what did you make? Why did you go and study technology at university? What is it that were in your younger life that kind of said to you, well, this is what I want to go and do?
So I think sometimes in life, things just bite you. Like a bug bites you so deep, and you can't ignore it. Now you can see this happening at school. Okay, so it's a place like St. Andrews or any school. There is a multitude of opportunities that are in front of you, and some people, they start playing rugby, and there's not a single minute that they don't want to be associated to rugby. They want to be watching it. They want to be talking about it. They want to be playing it. That's all that they want to do, and they get addicted. Happens with music, happens with other things. I can see it happening with my son. He, ever since he was like a baby and couldn't speak, he's been obsessed with numbers. He used to love just walking around, pointing out numbers on post boxes. That was his favorite thing, as I pushed him on the pram. For me, for whatever reason, it's always been technology. Like it's always been computers. It's always been tech. And my mom recognized this. And when we got our first home computer, the first thing I did was just get my hands dirty and play with it. And back then we didn't have internet. And so you were forced to, if there was any problem, you'd have to actually figure it out yourself. And then you'd click on every setting button. And one of the biggest gifts my mom ever gave me, like it's absolutely incredible. Mid-90s, we were paying, back then, these old PCs were $2,000, $3,000 in the mid-90s, converted to rands. Like absolute disaster. This was a huge investment for any family to make. Huge investment. All of my friends had the strict instruction when they had their desktop computer, their home PC, arrive home. If you don't break this, okay, else you're not going to get to use it. Blah blah blah. My mom was the complete opposite. She said, "Look, we've got this computer now. It's yours. Play with it. Break it. If you break it, we'll get it fixed. Get your hands dirty, all of that." And so she gave me permission to really play with this thing and to take it apart, to try different things. It was phenomenal. And so I think it's such a great opportunity as a parent or any mentor adult when you see that in a child, like really fuel that curiosity. Because now, even if it can be any technology thing, I know how to fix it. It's just I know the process of how to get to the end.
But if you did describe in technology, what is it that attracts you? I know it's not an easy question to answer because I just but what is it?
Okay, sure, it's hard. So I think there's two parts that I really come to life. One is the problem-solving aspect. And that's led to really where my career is. If I know how to do it, I've lost interest. I really have. So let's say we've got a problem at work that could be solved by having an app. Let's say it could be a podcast summary generator. Let's say my role is to generate the summaries of every podcast. Like, let's say that's my job. I get so much more interested in building the tool that does it for you automatically that by the time I've solved that problem, I don't want to have anything to do with that podcast anymore. Like, so my whole career has always been solving these things. I've got a very short attention span. And the other side of it is, I think it's just the ability to create that really appeals to me as well. I've always created websites. I've always created things. Early on, I was creating games and coding. Like, the fact that you can create things is has always been remarkable for me. I'm absolutely useless when it comes to things at home. Like, you know, if I put a nail on the wall to hang up a picture, it'll be skew, guaranteed. Like, doesn't matter how many, measure it twice, cut once, measure 1,000 times, cut once, it's going to suck, right? And also, I find that process stressful and hard. Whereas, so like all my son's friends and that, I'm the tech guy in the neighborhood, and so when one of their Nintendo Switches doesn't work because the kid's gone and jammed the game card in the wrong way around and bent all the pins and all of that, comes to my place and I fix it. I've got all the tools to pull these things apart and know where to get all the cheap replacement parts. And it costs me $12 in parts to do it as opposed to $250. But I love it. Like, they think that they want to pay me for it. I said, no, I like this. I really like this. This for me is fun.
Yeah, it's interesting. This thing pops in my head because my son is also in information technology, and when he was very small, one of the things that him and my wife did a lot together was building Lego. And she would, for her, it's important to take the papers and build a Lego in the way that it's designed. And so then she does it with him, and then she goes away somewhere else, and then she comes back, and then it's a completely different thing. It's changed completely. So, but anyway, I just want to say to you, you describe your mother and what she allowed you to do, which is probably one of the most significant moments in your life, being allowed to do that. So I'd say the resourcefulness is not Tony Robbins, to be honest with you. I think it comes from there. I think it comes from that early time that says, go do your thing, and then you say, okay, well, let me go and do my thing, and then, you'd probably, because what you're describing also is not just the programming or the software, it's also the hardware that you were tinkering with.
Yeah, definitely. But particularly back then, they were so interconnected. So like most people 99% of people have never ordered RAM and replaced RAM. Now, that's a good thing. It shows how the consumer technology market has progressed, but it was very common in the 90s and up until the mid-2000s that your computer's running slow, you go down to the local computer shop, or a guy who can get cheap RAM or whatever, a wholesale price, and then somebody comes and installs it. So the other thing I should probably say, if we're delving into my childhood, I really struggled at school, not because every school report I ever had said the exact same thing, and I still have them. Dawid is really, really smart, but he needs to learn to focus. And back then, and so the only thing there were a couple of things that I really excelled at. Like, one was music, one was computers. And back then, back then you were just called lazy. But now we know it's ADHD. There's some people that just cannot. I could pay attention for the first 30 seconds of a lesson, and then I was on another planet for the next 40 minutes. I was just daydreaming and all that. And the only way I got through classes like maths was because I had a tutor that I'd go spend one-on-one time with, and each week, and that I found a pleasure and amazing. And you can see one of the most powerful things in there with things like music and computer science is this concept of flow state, where I get instant feedback on whether it's successful or not. And so if I write an English essay, I don't know if it's any good up until I wait a couple of weeks. But with computers, I've got an idea for making a program. I try it. It doesn't work. Let me fix it this way. Music, I try it. Doesn't sound good. Let me try again. Let me try again. Let me try again. So that's where I could just dedicate thousands of hours. And so, but it was really, oh geez, yeah, like it's almost, I don't know how to describe. I don't want to say if it's romantic, like just that relationship with technology, just like it's so in my bones and DNA. Like what's possible with this stuff. Now I'm also a realist. Like there's a lot of technology that I'm no part of. I'm not on any social media platforms. I'm very, except for LinkedIn, I'm very aware of how these things have been made to hijack your dopamine and keep you addicted. And there's a lot of things where technology has not been a net positive.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit. The thing is, I remember, going back to when you talk about when you were Rhodes and so on. So our son was small, and he was young. He was probably 5 or so. And the first computer I bought was a Proline. And yes, you're right. It cost me 10,000 Rand in 1995, I think it was. Right? I mean, if you imagine that. So I bought that, and then this is my claim to fame on technology, Dawid. I was one of the first 14,000 people in South Africa to get internet. And so I got internet on 4,000 kilobyte, telephone line. But there was things in my life, and I was very fortunate to be alive at this time. We really are in terms of the changes that are happening in us. So there was a few things that happened in my lifetime that I regarded personally as completely significant game changer, and I recognized it at that point. And the first one was when internet came, and I wanted to get that because I'm an early adopter on so many things, right? So I do that. So I get internet and I put it on, and I realized here's a big thing. And the other time was a couple of years ago when I went into ChatGPT, and I realized there's another significant change that has happened. So let's go. I don't know if that's does that sound like I'm spot on? Is this about how you see it?
It is. I think also how fortunate we were to experience massive changes in an incredibly short period. So if we think of, let's just say 1998 to 2008, those 10 years. So 1998, most people would still have been on dial-up. Some people would still be disconnected at home. 2008, this 10 years later, people have iPhone. iPhone gets released. And so went from, and then if we take it back 5 years before that, like no computers at home, expensive computers at home, but disconnected, dial-up at home, expensive dial-up, particularly in South Africa, by the minute, and through to the iPhone in 2008. So I just think it's been remarkable to kind of see each of these shifts.
Yeah, and you're right. But let's talk about that a little bit before we go back to why you came to Australia, because I don't want to lose this particular point. One of the things that you talk about, technology for good. And there's a lot of negativity on the one hand going around. I mean, we see that some of these large language models are behaving. But there's also people and older people that really struggles with this. And then, of course, there's a group of people that just doesn't want this change to happen because it's just not good for us, right? And so, and it creates all sorts of problems. What do you mean by, it being used for good?
So I honestly haven't seen anybody have a really gloomy outlook on AI if they're beyond the stage of being overwhelmed by it. So if you understand how it works and you understand how to use it, the effect we always see is massive optimism. And there will be downsides, absolutely. Every technology will be downsides, but the net good is so profound. And the biggest reason, like I like if you stripped it right back down to its core, why I think this is important, is how it can be leveraged for learning. So doesn't matter who you are, what language you speak, what level of intellect you have, you could have a mental disability. And what you now have for basically for free is you have a mentor tutor that can help you 24 hours a day in a language that you can understand and also that that you relate to, going at a pace that you can maintain, and available 24/7. And so having a universal teacher is one of the most incredible parts. And it's definitely the number one way I use it. Like I use it to understand things. And like it is phenomenal how you could get it to explain quantum physics to a 7-year-old who really likes Minecraft. And it's going to make that relatable. And if you don't understand it, you can say, I don't understand. Can you try again? And that for me is one of the most remarkable things. And because it doesn't require much data to give this to you. Now, I'm not talking about creating the AI models. That's a different game, but that's a game that very few people play. Like that's Silicon Valley's game. We're consumers of it. You need a basic cell phone connection. And so you think of regional Eastern Cape, where I grew up. It's a very, of course, Grahamstown, the school I went to, that's all incredibly affluent, but that area of the Eastern Cape is incredibly, it's one of the poorest areas of South Africa. And I know, like my brother-in-law, he runs a charity that helps with education in that area. And we've been talking about this, the ability for anybody who has just an internet connection to basically have a mentor that can help them with everything. And we've tested it with South African native languages that aren't even that prominent in the training data. And it's excellent. And I can do it on voice as well. So that's the core of, that's the number one reason why I'm such an optimist is it's learning fuel. Now, sometimes people draw parallels between AI and like social media. They're not the same thing. They're different things. Like they're completely different things.
Yeah. I would agree with you there, and I think what you are saying is it's like anything, if you give that AI crappy prompts and you don't ask good questions, it's like anything, there's this movie I've just popped in my head, Dawid. There's this movie with Will Smith. It's called iRobot, and there's this I must have watched it 10 times because I love the whole idea and the concept and wherever it came from. But there's this one thing, he's the guy who was his mentor. He got killed, of course, and he fell. Well, he was pushed out of the building, and and then he left a little, like a hologram kind of thing, and Will Smith was trying to speak to him because he would speak to him, but he couldn't get the right information. And at one point he asked a question and he says, that's the right question. And then he could give the answer, which is the same thing, right? Is this all the stuff? If you don't know how to ask these things, if you don't know what to ask and frame it in a way that is useful to you, otherwise it's just lazy, right? You won't get the right answers and it will give you what you ask for, isn't it?
It is. If like you could summarize that into, there's simply two things that people need to figure out. One is inspiration. What do I use it for? I mean, that's the biggest thing that people wonder. What do I use it for? My work has just given me ChatGPT Enterprise or a Copilot license, whatever. What do I use it for? So I use it for very low level things like summarizing email or taking notes of a meeting. But the meeting didn't need to happen in the first place, and nobody's going to read the minutes. So they're incredibly low-level things. And the second is capability. So how do I use it? So what do I use it for, and how do I use it? Because when you're talking about how to prompt it, this is now how you use it. That's where that comes in. But what's the thing I'm trying to use this for? Now, the biggest mistake people have been making is they've been using it as a productivity tool. I think that's a very weak way to look at it. You need to use it as a strategic tool, as a thinking tool. So instead of help me summarize this document, actually what are five difficult questions the board might ask me about this decision before you're putting in front of a board. I use it as almost like I use it as a coach. So it's something I've done a lot more since the end of last year. I've got all my goals, objectives, priorities for the year. I've told it needs to treat me like a big brother, and so like positive, forward-looking, but also hard advice when I need to. We come up with our goals and all of that, and even just as a sounding board as a coach, it's remarkable. But how to go about something is really important. So let's say somebody wanted to start a podcast. A great way to use AI would be, I want to start a podcast. Can you research all the possible ways that I might do that? That's the idea, but the capability is more around how to ask the prompt. And instead of going through lots of different prompting strategies, simply say, can you ask me 5 questions before responding? That will already make a huge impact to the quality of the response that you get. Because what it's going to come back with and ask is this, what's the reason for your podcast? Are you trying to commercialize it, or is it just a hobby, or
Correct.
is it actually to try awareness? And so now that's how you do that.
Yeah, but I think that is so important. And, for some people like yourself, it's very logical. And for other people, what you've just said now will change the way that they think about it. Because, I mean, the jobs that I do or the things that I do, I create content in the sense that I've written and published books and I do coaching and that sort of stuff. And I have to generate interesting things all the time. And so there's 2 ways to do it with this AI. The one is to say, generate it for me. And that's just simply lazy. And the other thing is to say, here are all my ideas. This is my thoughts that I have. I've, thinking about it this way. I've, written this, or I've kind of created it this way. What do you think of this? What are the kind of holes you can put through it? What are the 5 alternatives to that? And I think that's when it becomes useful, is when you are prepared to do the hard work, the thinking work, and not allow it to AI, which is really the general information of what is out there, to give you a general answer. And because you see this all the time, Dawid, that suddenly people who have never been able to write one sentence now writes 20 paragraphs of things that you just look at it and you see it's like that, right? That's lazy. I
Exactly. It's okay, there's a few things at play here. So it's very easy to be average. And that's if you want to write average, you want to be an average provider to your you want to be an average service provider to your customers. You want to be an average writer. Just put a prompt into AI and get it to produce something. We call that AI slop. I don't know who came up with that term, but I love it. I want to thank that person so much.
It came from America somewhere. Yeah. I think Harvard actually said it.
And so it's something like I'm very critical with my team, and we have a culture of no slop. And the thing with writing, so I don't use AI to write. Like, I've never written a blog post or anything that's created by AI. I may have used it to just see if there's a way to tidy it up, shorten it up, make it more logical, but even that's quite rare. When you write, and this is really important, you mentioned you're a writer. Writing is thinking. So you a lot of your thoughts crystallize as you start writing, and even words, we're a world of words, and so finding the right words for things, like writing actually helps you say it as a really nice sentence, articulate that kind of thing. But writing is very hard for most people. So that's where AI can help you become a better writer. You can say, do the first draft yourself, but you could say, I'm trying to come up for a way to announce my new podcast to my family and friends. If you just say, write an announcement email for my family and friends, it's gonna be soulless. First of all, it's gonna be garbage, and people will know it's written by AI. And we still have a relationship with AI created content whether it's good or not, that we devalue it. So if I have an espresso pod, if that does better coffee than I have at the coffee shop, if I put that Nespresso pod machine in the coffee shop there and said, help yourself, like no queue, we have like 50 of them, help yourself, it's better coffee. Like I'm not going to be able to charge any more than 50 cents for that pod. Like we still value human interaction and creativity. If it's internal process and policy documents and things like that, then of course just use this. Like that's a more operational tool. But it's worth pointing out the importance of actually the writing process. Now, to be remarkable in your field requires work. The idea that you can just put it into AI and then, you know, all of a sudden you're going to excel is fiction. But for those who want to stand out, this is an amazing technology to leverage, because if you're a great speaker, you can run great interviews, and you've always wanted to do a podcast, but you haven't known how, this is where it can help you. A platform like the one we're recording on right now can takes a lot of the legwork out of you. It can help you brainstorm and all of that. Like there's so many things that this technology can do. Sometimes people are concerned about standing out in a world of AI-generated content. I think it's going to be easier than ever, because you think of the average LinkedIn feed, it's going to be full of garbage slop.
Yeah.
But imagine there's going to be 2 or 3 people where every time they write something, people read that because it's thoughtful. It's not just noise. You're not just contributing to it. So there's a few things at play to leverage this.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I want to take us back a little bit, but just this one comment. You know, personally, I've been so active on LinkedIn for many years because of the kind of things that I do and running my own business. And Dawid, the truth is I haven't gone back onto LinkedIn for 1 year now, writing anything, simply because I want all of this slop to kind of have its day. And when I'm ready, I'll go back if I have something to say. But right now, it's I think I'd rather do a useful podcast, because I'm actually talking to a human being. So let me take you to you leave South Africa and you join James Cook. Sorry, we're jumping around, but I want to get there because I want to get to building businesses in Australia. So you then decide to come back to Australia. Why did you make that decision?
So it was in some ways the easiest decision to make, because I really was quite off the rails at Rhodes, and the writing was on the wall that I think eventually, like my computer science background and intellect and curiosity and tinkering got me through the first year, but second year was a big ramp up. And so like I got through enough exams to make it to third year. But I could feel that this wasn't going to end well, and I wanted to restart. And I had the Australian passport, and my dad at that point had moved to North Queensland and actually made a huge change himself, and left finance and built a prawn farm in North Queensland. He always saw this idea that aquaculture is hugely neglected. It's the protein source for 50% of the world's population, something like that. Wow. And oceans are getting decimated. And so he saw this opportunity to create sustainable aquaculture and all of that. And finally had the moment, big kudos to him, much later in his life, putting all his money on the line and built a prawn farm in North Queensland, which was an hour and a half south of Townsville and, north of Townsville. And so it was the easy place to get started when I arrived in Australia, was going to James Cook in North Queensland, and because it was only about an hour from the farm.
And did you work on the farm?
I did a lot. Hectic, hardcore, brutal work. Talking 33, 34, which people might think is not that hot when it's over 40 in Melbourne today, but it doesn't get much hotter than that in a highly tropical climate. But it's combined with 95% humidity, and you're in salt water all day. You literally crocodiles had to pull crocodiles out of ponds, and aquaculture is hard work. It's very, very manual. It's hectic manual labor, and yeah, like particularly because labor cost is so high in Australia. There's we had some specialists come over from Thailand. It's a very big prawn farming area. Some experts, and they brought some of their workers to actually help us with the crop. And these workers, they were like, we usually have 5 people helping us do this thing, and you're just asking us to do it. I said, that's just the way it is here. So the big thing with that particular industry and prawns in general is it's very much a boom or bust thing. Prawns are you can lose a crop overnight with a delicate imbalance. But I worked very, very hard on the farm.
And did that all work out?
It did. I mean, incredibly difficult for my dad, right? So it took 10 years. I think interesting. I don't know if he regrets doing it. I mean, but eventually sold the farm to a big conglomerate, but really difficult 10 years. The ups and downs of that industry, and had 2 significant floods during that time in North Queensland, multiple cyclones. So, yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I have not read this about you anywhere. So that's great. I mean, that gave you a very different perspective again about what you said earlier. If you're not prepared to do the work, you're not going to get anywhere. And so there you were, helping your dad. And so, but you went to James Cook and did also technology. So that's how you finished then your graduation and did your course there?
I did, and for me it was people thought I was mad for this, but I didn't actually ask to. I basically didn't carry over any of my subjects that I'd done at Rhodes, even though I'd passed them. Even statistics and a number of other subjects like commercial law, these other types of subjects, I'd actually passed them at Rhodes, but I actually started again. I didn't want to bring over a 52% pass mark on an exam. I wanted to excel at this and wanted to start again. And so I went on a huge health kick. I lost 50 kilograms in about 6 months. I was in Men's Health and all of this on that transformation. Started really excelling at my exams and really kind of keen for the next chapter. Yep.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. And so just fast forward your career, if I can it's a big summary, but I think there's National Australia Banking, and then there's Cloud Sherpas, and then there's Accenture. And there's a reason why you got into Accenture, right? Because if I'm right, it got a lot to do with Cloud Sherpas. What was that about?
Okay, so, and then, I've had a few of these kind of tangents along the way. So my dad was in finance. His banker was NAB for the farm. And so they were quite a big account of the local Ingham banking, the bank branch there. And so got an introduction, all of that, and got a job with NAB. When I had another, it was just it was a misstep. Why did I go into finance as a banker when I was so deeply...
Yeah. I was wondering about that when I read that.
It was, I think it came out of an insecurity of grabbing the thing that's in front of you. And I did have another job offer or going through the process, in a tech role with KPMG's IT advisory and that type of thing. But I don't know, I just kind of grabbed that and tried to follow in my dad's footsteps. The whole time at NAB, I just couldn't quell this longing that this is not what I thought. This is not what I think I need to be doing, and that I should be in tech. And my friends who were in technology, I was so excited about the things that they were doing, but instead of jumping, I thought, no, what I need to do is actually get a much better finance role. And so I started going down the chartered financial analyst path. I wanted to be like a trader and dealer, just like my dad. and then ended up passing this qualification of the first level of the Chartered Financial Analyst, one of the most difficult exams in the world. That series, the 6-hour exam, written at the same time across the world, which only 20-30% people pass. And like, I passed it, incredible moment in my life, and then landed this job as a dealer with NAB in Brisbane, which is uncommon, not many roles there. And within the first week, I thought, oh my gosh, is this it?
Yeah.
Like, I thought, is this it? This is not for me. And I got more excited about creating little tools that helped all of us, like automatically attach product disclosure statements to emails. You don't have to drag and drop it each time. And I thought, there was one point where I said to my wife, well, then girlfriend, now wife, that I'm parking, trying to get a tech job, because I'd started thinking about it, and then after this promotion, that I was like, my next move is in tech, and even if it's a day before I die, like when I'm mid-90s, I am like, that's my path from now on, is to move into tech. And so I started applying for hundreds of jobs, and actually just got the first job that I applied for, but it took much longer, and joined Accenture first. As a consultant, I took a 50% salary cut, and I said goodbye to a 6-figure bonus, which was life-changing as a 29-year-old. Would have bought our first house, would have done this thing. But for me, it was I was happy to start again. And it was also the perfect time to do that, because we weren't married yet, we didn't have a mortgage yet, and we didn't have kids yet. And so I think it's very important, whatever you do in life, is to make sure that you set yourself up for flexibility in the future, and you don't bog yourself down. That's a huge thing. And worked at Accenture for about not even a year, but my first project there was a Salesforce project, and they asked me, do you have experience with Salesforce? I said, well, we used it to log our deals at NAB. They said, well, that's better than everybody we have available. So off you go, and went into my first project later that day. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Salesforce, particularly back then, was this amazing technology that kind of, if you knew enough about the technology and you knew enough about the problem that you're trying to solve, you were very, very powerful, because it was mostly clicks, not code. And so that went well. And then I was doing the Salesforce stuff. Accenture wasn't doing much Salesforce work at the time in Australia, and they were wanting to, but then I got approached. But I loved that cloud technology so much. And I got approached by cloud Sherpas, like on a Wednesday. Hey, we're looking for Salesforce people. Went for a coffee on the Thursday. On a Friday, I had an offer, and Accenture was just awesome with me leaving. They said, look, you can always come back. Like, we get it. Because I was like, I've got to play catch up. Like, I'm joining this career. I'm joining this late. I want to get my hands dirty. I don't just want to be helping with sales. And then I worked for Cloud Sherpas for 3 years, and then Accenture acquired Cloud Sherpas. So it was kind of full circle.
It's meant to be, right?
Yeah, it was meant to be. Absolutely.
And then you stayed with Accenture for quite a while, right? I mean, you became the MD or something like that?
Yeah, so I was there 8 years. And so 2 years after the acquisition, I knew I was on the partner path, and got made partner there. We call it a managing director there. Just it was 2020, like at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, and that kind of reset things. Any timelines I had, because now you're looking at much more kind of a 5-year horizon of the things you want to achieve, and also your incentives and that. And then we had COVID, which is like 2 years that kind of lost, and you blink and it's 8 years had kind of gone by. And so that was that journey. Yeah.
So, but at some point, no, so what were you doing at Accenture? Because, it's a consultancy group, right? So from what I understand. And so what were you doing there?
Yeah. So, Accenture, they're real. They're very unique in what they do. They're a real behemoth of what they're able to do. They are very much an execution-based company as opposed to a auditing and consulting and PowerPoint-based company. They do those things as well, not the audit, but they do all the consulting strategy type work as well. But what they are is they're a software engineering business process outsourcing company. So the projects I was involved with were everything ranging from several of the major banks, several of the major telcos, media companies, everything, taking their technology from one place to another. So it might be something as simple as one of the energy providers, when you call into their call center, it's a shocker. You're on hold for like 10 minutes and then you get the wrong person. There's a lot to fix that. My whole role has always been taking the gap from where they are now and what's possible with the technology, and being able to translate that. So I've always been that satellite example you gave at the beginning is perfect for this. I've always been the guy that is able to take the vision of what a customer is able to do. I'm deeply, deeply, deeply curious, like to a fault. Like when I have a conversation with somebody, if they're interesting, it feels like I'm interrogating them because I ask them so many questions because I'm just so damn curious. So I really understand what they want to do. Then I have a look at the technology that's possible, but then I tinker. I think that's a big thing that I do. I don't now come up with a slide deck that says this is what you should do.
Yes.
I actually build it. Like I actually build it, even though it's just like a demo or whatever. I tinker, I get my hands dirty on it, and then I'm able to describe, okay, this is, I think, what we can do.
And with your mother's voice in your head that says it's okay if you do it, even if you break it.
It's okay if you do it, even if you break it. Not only is it that, but it is the only way to do it.
Yeah.
So there's a brilliant book called Skin in the Game. There's another one called Anti-Fragile by a guy called Nassim Nicholas Taleb. I can't remember. He predicted the 2008 crash and made what he describes as FU money off of that crash because he bet against the whole thing and published a book a year before that called The Black Swan, predicting it. And everybody said he was an idiot. But in one of those books, he had a really good example of tinkering. He said, where any big innovation, invention, business outcome, anything in history has always come from tinkering. It's afterwards that people play it, like turn it into a deliberate strategy. Like they say, the reason why we did it this way is because we had a plan to do A, and then we were going to do B, and then we're going to do that. The reality of getting there was this kind of looked interesting, so we played with that. We saw that worked, and so we carried on doing that. That thing didn't work, so we stopped doing that. It's much closer to cooking, like building a business, anything in life. Does it taste good? If it does, great, keep it as it is. If I add a little bit of extra salt, does it taste better or not? No. And so and then you just constantly tweak and refine. And that's very much how any technology has to be learned and tested, is by getting your hands dirty and playing with it and tinkering.
Yeah, but at the same time, you can't be scared, and you have to have courage doing this because you could lose everything in the process, right?
You could. I think the thing is, though, there's so much risk is built up in your head that makes you fearful of things. Like, so if you wanted to try start a business, it's actually, first you need to understand if there's a market for it. Like, do customers actually want this thing? And so there's actually ways of testing that before a customer buys something. Now, it is not fill out a survey. That's nothing. Like, run a webinar for it and see if anybody turns up. Like, that's if somebody's actually trading time. And if that didn't work, try something else. And so there's lots of different ways you can tinker and test. But particularly with this AI revolution, the only way to find the right prompts that work, the right ideas of what works in reality is by playing with it, is by tinkering, like trial and error, test and learn, reflect.
Yeah, and this is probably the reason why you then decided to create your own company called Pathfinder at the time, because you say, well, I'm not gonna try and compete with technology because that's all sits somewhere else in the US, and what I can do is to say, how do we take this what we have and make it useful, and actually create something that people didn't know was even possible. And was that the reason why you then went off and say, well, let me go and create this company, and then you got to the name Pathfinder, which is which is very similar to A Stranger, a Suitcase in the story. It tells the story of what this is all about, right?
So, like when you become a partner at any major company, it's a remarkable privilege, and it's also a remarkable curse, right? Like, because you end up becoming a mega sales machine of somebody else's priorities and agendas, and you're there to really grow that company and deliver return on investment or whatever is required. Now, off of a massive capital base, place like Accenture, that means selling significantly large deals and all of that. I'm deeply curious. I've got a very short attention span, and I like things that you can build quickly and that are cool and interesting and impactful. And so I saw that there was that we were kind of going in different directions. And I did very well as a partner there. I was very, very well regarded. But I could see this happening where, as I was getting more and more senior, I was actually wanting to get interested in smaller and smaller things. So it was like, it's not, I don't want to do the mega global enterprise transformation. I want to try to see if we can, could we make this could we make the onboarding process like of a bank for one customer, just one step? Could we just try to automate that one thing as quickly as possible? Right. I could just see this, and that AI was starting to make it more realistic. The other thing, I know this sounds ridiculous, like I hate meetings and I hate PowerPoint. Like, it's not, I'm bad at those things. I'm legitimately bad at meetings. So if either I'm running a meeting or like I shouldn't be there. And with PowerPoint, it's almost like I have a genetic disability to that format. Now, I was like in those big consulting firms, they love meetings and they love PowerPoint. And so I was getting fat, I was getting anxious, I was getting very depressed. I just want to build. I just want to build stuff, right? And so I could feel that it was starting to dawn on me. I've got to actually try something different, and very open with my leadership, which were just the best. And eventually said, but then ChatGPT came out.
Yes.
And your moment, it was the same with my moment as well. Like, it captured my imagination like nothing before. I probably hadn't felt that way since my first Accenture Salesforce project in like 2012 when I made my career change, where I was like, like you think of the big impact, some people are a lot cleverer than me are looking how it impacts society. I just loved it. Like, I just thought this was fascinating. And I'm not, I've always been a business kind of applications guy. Like, I didn't think of how do I use this to create computer games or anything like that. I was immediately like, what are all the productivity things I could do with this? But one big thing at the time, we had a big customer that needed to modernize a lot of their code base. It was like 30-year-old code, like somewhat documented, that could, and it was programming language called Delphi, Pascal, which some people will be smiling who's listening. I hadn't heard of that language since my high school project in Grahamstown. I hadn't heard of it since then. Hadn't heard that language mentioned. All this code was built on that, and two people responsible for maintaining the code who have been there for 30 years. Now, immediately, the pictures that come into people's heads of what these two people look like, it's exactly that. Exactly those two people. And the plan was initially, we've got to document the code before we can decide how to get rid of it and move to a new system. And so let's get a team of 4 people to go through this horrible code that nobody's touched and write documentation for it. And that sucks. And so that was my first tinkering. It was over the Christmas break, actually. Like ChatGPT came out like in November, something like that, and was over the Christmas break. I used the large language model behind it, very secure, all of that. But and just started testing on a Pascal Delphi code. And if I told it a bit about the problem, what it's trying to address, like what could it do? And I saw it started creating this like business definition, and then I said, well, can you describe how somebody would use it? Like first was just extracting business rules, which it did great, and the second thing was, can you describe how somebody might use this? And then kind of did that. It was just, and all of a sudden realized actually this could probably take a years-long project with 4 people and make it a 1-person project and take 3 to 4 weeks. And when people talk about these 30% productivity gains, like they're making that up out of thin air. There are 95+% gains of work that people don't want to do. There's not a single person on the planet who says, I want to, for the next year, go through code that was written 30 to 40 years ago on a language that nobody uses. No, there's not a person on the planet who wants to do that. And so that's a big thing with AI, is it mostly automates the things we don't feel like doing.
Yeah, that is an amazing story. And I think that, if I listen to you, one of the things that you do really well is that you describe very complex problems in a simple way. And I think that's also, when you were sitting in Accenture and you were dealing with all these big things, and you say, well, maybe there are just smaller, useful things, things that people need every day, how to do onboarding more effectively, or, if I send an email, is there a way to automate an attachment to it or something like that, whatever, so that's, but we're running through this podcast, but the thing that I wanted to just talk to you about before we sort of get to the end is building, this type of business in Australia, and if there's somebody listening to this podcast, a young entrepreneur coming out of South Africa, want to come to Australia, maybe they want to set up a business, what would be the 2 or 3 things you tell them?
Yeah, but it's a great question. And one, I've learned more about entrepreneurship than AI in the last 2 years. I mean, you've made me realize that maybe I'm not a first-time entrepreneur, because that's how I usually describe myself with Pathfinder. It's just over 2 years ago that I started that. Maybe if I think back to that internet cafe in Grahamstown, it was before that. But
and the pub.
And the pub, the college pub. That was the Toot. The Toot and Tiger. That's what it was called.
The what?
The Toot and Tiger.
Oh, the Toot. Okay.
Yeah, that's what it was called. But what happens in the Toot stays in the Toot. Okay. I was in an incredibly dark place maybe 6 weeks into Pathfinder. I think it was like mid-Feb 2024. And I actually stumbled upon a podcast on Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett, and he was interviewing this Aussie guy called Daniel Priestley, and it was a very cringe title of the podcast. Very cringe. It was like, meet the Australian money-making expert who helps. It was very cringe. I was going to the gym. I was in a very dark place. I listened to this, and he outlined this approach of. He had a couple of great things. Like one was, everything is downstream from lead generation of your business. The success of a business is downstream from your ability to generate leads. Now, I used to think I'm very good at sales, but that's because somebody else has generated the lead for me, the warm introduction, things like that. And so that was the one thing, is that generating a massive amount of demand for your product is the most important thing. Now, how do you generate a whole lot of demand that leads are coming in every single week? Everything we do is inbound. We don't do any cold outreach or anything like that. And the way you do that is through becoming a key person of influence. And what that means is you get a little bit more famous in your niche. And there's a few more angles to it. Like, how do you do that? It's by making it easy for people to window shop. It is using LinkedIn. It's hosting a lot of webinars. We hosted lots of webinars where there was one person on that webinar, and I still pretended like we've had an army of people there. I'm trying to rush through a couple of core important things, but the first is that it is remarkably, I say it's remarkably simple, not easy. Simple and easy are not the same thing. It's very simple to lose like 10 kilograms. Just don't eat extra calories.
Right. Right.
It's not easy to do that, but it's very simple to create an outsized amount of demand and interest for your product, whilst at the same time you're building your product as well. You can actually sell a product before it's even ready, or at least have an enormous amount of demand. There's a way of doing that. That's the first thing to solve for. That's what I would say. Now, one of the great things of being in 2026, and this is why I'm such an eternal optimist, despite all of the challenges that sometimes technology solves, is when I grew up in Grahamstown in the Eastern Cape, 100% I had an advantage to people who went to public schools and things like that. Because maybe not so much me, no, definitely me, because my friends who were staying there, who were boarders, had very wealthy parents who were prominent people in the cities, right? And so they could introduce me to people and things like that. Not that anything ever happened this way, but you can see that advantage. Whereas now, anybody can learn anything for free. You can market it for free on LinkedIn. You can, all your FPOS facilities, everything for free as well, like through Stripe. So all those barriers are gone.
Right.
And so it's just up to you
Right.
to kind of solve that. Now, the big gold mine right now, but do it like everybody. You're probably quite good at something that others aren't good at. It can be as simple as, and others, I'm not talking about others in your profession, I'm talking about the rest of the world. Let's say you're not a very good electrician, but you're an electrician. You're still a much better electrician than, and you're still a much better electrician than anybody who's doing AI professionally. So if you can now take AI, take ChatGPT, and translate it to how to use ChatGPT as an electrician, now you've got an entire business of being the enablement partner or body for teaching electricians, who's one man in a van, a lot of them. You can do all your small business administration and all of that kind of thing. This is a very real example. One of my friends who's an electrician, I'm not saying he's an average electrician, he's a very good one, Nick, he showed me once how he was using, I showed him how to use ChatGPT. He showed me how he was taking photos. The next week, he showed me how he'd taken photos of like a warehouse of where he's going to install a commercial air conditioner, and got ChatGPT to superimpose the air conditioner up there and show the customer what it would look like. Showed how he'd basically like done all his marketing on there, all of that. I just couldn't believe it. I said, Nick, you need to stop being an electrician and start becoming the electrician who shows electricians how to use AI. Like, so anybody who can close the gap in AI and make it specific to a job, a domain, an industry, that's what we all want. You don't want the AI, how to use AI guy. You want the how to use AI to improve your podcast. And then the next section is find better guests, market it, editing. That's who you're going to pay, and you're going to pay much more than, you're much happier to pay more than anybody else. So that's the big thing. Create demand, and then also try close the gap in some industry.
Yeah, this is really good advice. I think what I'm hearing is that I think step one, which is really important, is that do you have something that's going to be useful? I mean, you gotta know that. It doesn't help you try and market and build something that nobody's going to use. So that's the first thing, and then the second thing is find people, and you gotta work hard on that in terms of finding the right people, talking to the right people, putting yourself out there. Yeah,
absolutely. So the first thing on that, do you have to find something that's useful. You have to preface that with find something that you think is useful, like to others, because you might not. And you only really know you only have an inkling of what people want, maybe when you've had 30 conversations about that. But there's so many ways to speak to people. I'm actually an introvert. I either at a conference, I do tons of keynote speaking. Either I'm on stage or I'm not there. I hate all of the small talk in that. There are so many ways through industry associations, through webinars, through groups. People are desperate for interesting, creative people who are trying to solve a problem. People are desperate to put those people at a conference, in a breakout, some kind of working group. Like there's, yeah. But again, use ChatGPT to help you brainstorm what this would look like.
Yeah. No, it's been a wonderful conversation, Dawid. I really, really enjoyed it, and we went around a few things. Some of the stuff that sticks with me is the important role your mother played when you were young and impressionable, and say, look, go out there and do your thing. And I think that's where your whole love for technology was just exponentially. It growed, and you've grown to where you are today. And then being curious, and not scared, and then making complex things simple. I think those are the things I'm hearing, and it's been a wonderful conversation. Really loved it. It's a little bit different, this one, but I think important, because AI has become so topical. And what I love what you've done today is you gave so many good ideas, so many good thoughts, and then also how do you build your business, but also never forgetting your roots. You talked quite a bit about how you grew up and what you were experiencing then, and so that's important.
It is, and I think in general, be it speaking or trying to get a business going, the more you can play the bridge of translating it for your customers, the better. I often see keynote. There are some other speakers that I've seen where when they finish speaking, they want the audience to go, "Wow, that guy's clever." I'm not really sure what they spoke about, but wow, that's a clever guy. That's the wrong way. You want to walk off that stage and people go, "Wow, I feel so much cleverer," because you understand something that you thought was complex now. So that's all really important. Yeah, but thank you. It's been a great session, and definitely I think it's been one of my favorite podcasts I've ever done by miles. It's been great. Like, I've never gone kind of that journey in the past again. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. Also, I have become more clever after this podcast. Just so you know. No, I have. Very interesting thing. So, Dawid, thank you very much. Really appreciate it, and all the best. It's been fantastic to talk to you all the way from Melbourne today.
Thank you very much.